Welcome everyone to Expanding Your Consciousness. And tonight our topic is, what if there is nothing wrong with any of us? So we often think that there is something wrong with us, and I really want us to discuss further why we think there's something wrong with ourselves or with other people. And so tonight, what I'd like to do is show a video by a woman who is a brain scientist. This is a video that was released in 2008. It's Bolte Taylor, and it's called A Stroke of Insight. It's a TED Talk, and it's about 20 minutes long, but I think it's a really good introduction to our topic tonight. And what I'd like you to pay attention to in this video is when she discusses her feelings, how she feels, because what happens is she talks about how she has a stroke on the left side of her brain, and so the right side of the brain takes over. So let's begin with this video.
I grew up to study the brain because I have a brother who has been diagnosed with a brain disorder, schizophrenia. And as a sister, and later as a scientist, I wanted to understand, why is it that I can take my dreams, I can connect them to my reality, and I can make my dreams come true? What is it about my brother's brain and his schizophrenia that he cannot connect his dreams to a common and shared reality, so they instead become delusion? So I dedicated my career to research into the severe mental illnesses, and I moved from my home state of Indiana to Boston, where I was working in the lab of Dr. Francine Bennis in the Harvard Department of Psychiatry. And in the lab, we were asking the question, what are the biological differences between the brains of individuals who would be diagnosed as normal control, as compared with the brains of individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or bipolar disorder? So we were essentially mapping the microcircuitry of the brain, which cells are communicating with which cells, with which chemicals, and then in what quantities of those chemicals. So there was a lot of meaning in my life because I was performing this type of research during the day, but then in the evenings and on the weekends, I traveled as an advocate for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. But on the morning of December 10, 1996, I woke up to discover that I had a brain disorder of my own. A blood vessel exploded in the left half of my brain. And in the course of 4 hours, I watched my brain completely deteriorate in its ability to process all information. On the morning of the hemorrhage, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. I essentially became an infant in a woman's body. If you've ever seen a human brain, it's obvious that the two hemispheres are completely separate from one another. And I have brought for you a real human brain. Thank you. So this is a real human brain. This is the front of the brain, the back of the brain with the spinal cord hanging down. And this is how it would be positioned inside of my head. And when you look at the brain, it's obvious that the two cerebral cortices are completely separate from one another. For those of you who understand computers, our right hemisphere functions like a parallel processor, while our left hemisphere functions like a serial processor. The two hemispheres do communicate with one another through the corpus callosum, which is made up of some 300 million axonal fibers. But other than that, the two hemispheres are completely separate. Because they process information differently, each of our hemispheres think about different things, they care about different things, and dare I say, they have very different personalities. Excuse me. Thank you. It's been a joy. Our right human hemisphere is all about this present moment. It's all about right here, right now. Our right hemisphere, it thinks in pictures, and it learns kinesthetically through the movement of our bodies. Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems, and then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what this present moment smells like and tastes like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. I am an energy being connected to the energy all around me through the consciousness of my right hemisphere. We are energy beings connected to one another through the consciousness of our right hemispheres as one human family. And right here, right now, we are brothers and sisters on this planet, here to make the world a better place. And in this moment, we are perfect, we are whole, and we are beautiful. My left hemisphere, our left hemisphere, is a very different place. Our left hemisphere thinks linearly and methodically. Our left hemisphere is all about the past, and it's all about the future. Our left hemisphere is designed to take that enormous collage of the present moment and start picking out details, and more details about those details. It then categorizes and organizes all that information, associates it with everything in the past we've ever learned, and projects into the future all of our possibilities. And our left hemisphere thinks in language. It's that ongoing brain chatter that connects me and my internal world to my external world. It's that little voice that says to me, hey, you got to remember to pick up bananas on your way home. I need them in the morning. It's that calculating intelligence that reminds me when I have to do my laundry. But perhaps most important, it's that little voice that says to me, I am. I am. And as soon as my left hemisphere says to me, I am, I become separate. I become a single, solid individual, separate from the energy flow around me and separate from you. And this is a portion of my brain that I lost on the morning of my stroke. On the morning of the stroke, I woke up to a pounding pain behind my left eye. And it was the kind of pain, caustic pain, that you get when you bite into ice cream. And it just gripped me, and then it released me. And then it just gripped me, and then it released me. And it was very unusual for me to ever experience any kind of pain, so I thought, okay, I'll just start my normal routine. So I got up and I jumped onto my cardio glider, which is a full body, full exercise machine. And I'm jamming away on this thing, and I'm realizing that my hands look like primitive claws grasping onto the bar. And I thought, that's very peculiar. And I looked down at my body, and I thought, whoa, I'm a weird looking thing. And it was as though my consciousness had shifted away from my normal perception of reality, where I'm the person on the machine having the experience, to some esoteric space where I'm witnessing myself having this experience. And it was all very peculiar, and my headache was just getting worse. So I get off the machine, and I'm walking across my living room floor, and I realize that everything inside of my body has slowed way down. And every step is very rigid and very deliberate. There's no fluidity to my pace, and there's this constriction in my area of perception, so I'm just focused on internal systems. And I'm standing in my bathroom getting ready to step into the shower, and I could actually hear the dialogue inside of my body. I heard a little voice saying, okay, you muscles, you got to contract, and you muscles, you relax. And then I lost my balance, and I'm propped up against the wall. And I looked down at my arm, and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. I can't define where I begin and where I end, because the atoms and the molecules of my arm blended with the atoms and molecules of the wall. And all I could detect was this energy. And I'm asking myself, what is wrong with me? What is going on? And in that moment, my brain chatter, my left hemisphere brain chatter, went totally silent. Just like someone took a remote control and pushed the mute button. Total silence. And at first I was shocked to find myself inside of a silent mind. But then I was immediately captivated by the magnificence of the energy around me. And because I could no longer identify the boundaries of my body, I felt enormous and expansive. I felt at one with all the energy that was, and it was beautiful there. And then all of a sudden, my left hemisphere comes back online, and it says to me, hey, we got a problem, we got a problem, we got to get some help. And I'm going, oh, I got a problem, I got a problem. So it's like, okay, I got a problem. But then I immediately drifted right back out into the consciousness, and I affectionately refer to this space as La La Land. But it was beautiful there. Imagine what it would be like to be totally disconnected from your brain chatter that connects you to the external world. So here I am in this space, and my job and any stress related to my job, it was gone. And I felt lighter in my body. And imagine all of the relationships in the external world and any stressors related to any of those, they were gone. And I felt this sense of peacefulness. And imagine what it would feel like to lose 37 years of emotional baggage. Oh, I felt euphoria. Euphoria. It was beautiful there. And then again, my left hemisphere comes online and it says, hey, you've got to pay attention. We've got to get help. And I'm thinking, I got to get help. I got to focus. So I get out of the shower and I'm mechanically dressed and I'm walking around my apartment and I'm thinking, I got to get to work. I got to get to work. Can I drive? Can I drive? And in that moment, my right arm went totally paralyzed by my side. Then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. And then the next thing my brain says to me is, wow, this is so cool. This is so cool. How many brain scientists have the opportunity to study their own brain from the inside out? And then it crosses my mind, but I'm a very busy woman. I don't have time for a stroke. It's like, okay, I can't stop the stroke from happening, so I'll do this for a week or two, and then I'll get back to my routine. Okay, so I got to call help. I got to call work. I couldn't remember the number at work. So I remembered in my office I had a business card with my number on it. So I go into my business room, and I pull out a 3-inch stack of business cards. And I'm looking at the card on top. And even though I could see clearly in my mind's eye what my business card looked like, I couldn't tell if this was my card or not, because all I could see were pixels. And the pixels of the words blended with the pixels of the background and the pixels of the symbols, and I just couldn't tell. And then I would wait for what I call a wave of clarity. And in that moment, I would be able to reattach to normal reality. And I could tell, that's not the card, that's not the card, that's not the card. It took me 45 minutes to get 1 inch down inside of that stack of cards. In the meantime, for 45 minutes, the hemorrhage is getting bigger in my left hemisphere. I do not understand numbers. I do not understand a telephone, but it's the only plan I have. So I take the phone pad and I put it right here. I take the business card, I put it right here, and I'm matching the shape of the squiggles on the card to the shape of the squiggles on the phone pad. But then I would drift back out into La La Land and not remember if when I come back if I'd already dialed those numbers. So I had to wield my paralyzed arm like a stump and cover the numbers as I went along and push them so that as I would come back to normal reality, I'd be able to tell, yes, I've already dialed that number. Eventually, the whole number gets dialed, and I'm listening to the phone, and my colleague picks up the phone, and he says to me, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, he sounds like a golden retriever. And so I say to him, clear in my mind, I say to him, this is Jill, I need help. And what comes out of my voice is, and I think, oh my gosh, I sound like a golden retriever. So I didn't know that I couldn't speak or understand language until I tried. So he recognizes that I need help, and he gets me help. And a little while later, I'm riding in an ambulance from one hospital across Boston to Mass General Hospital. And I curl up into a little fetal ball. And just like a balloon, with the last bit of air just right out of the balloon, I just felt my energy lift, and I felt my spirit surrender. And In that moment, I knew that I was no longer the choreographer of my life, and either the doctors rescue my body and give me a second chance at life, or this was perhaps my moment of transition. When I woke later that afternoon, I was shocked to discover that I was still alive. When I felt my spirit surrender, I said goodbye to my life, and my mind was now suspended between two very opposite planes of reality. Stimulation coming in through my sensory systems felt like pure pain. Light burned my brain like wildfire, and sounds were so loud and chaotic that I could not pick a voice out from the background noise, and I just wanted to escape. Because I could not identify the position of my body in space, I felt enormous and expansive, like a genie just liberated from her bottle. And my spirit soared free like a great whale gliding through a sea of silent euphoria. Nirvana. I found nirvana. And I remember thinking there's no way I would ever be able to squeeze the enormousness of myself back inside this tiny little body. But then I realized, but I'm still alive. I'm still alive, and I have found nirvana. And if I have found nirvana and I'm still alive, then everyone who is alive can find nirvana. And I pictured a world filled with beautiful, peaceful, compassionate, loving people who knew that they could come to this space at any time, and that they could purposely choose to step to the right of their left hemispheres and find this peace. And then I realized what a tremendous gift this experience could be. What a stroke of insight this could be to how we live our lives. And it motivated me to recover. 2.5 weeks after the hemorrhage, the surgeons went in and they removed a blood clot the size of a golf ball that was pushing on my language centers. Here I am with my mama, who's a true angel in my life. It took me 8 years to completely recover. So, who are we? We are the life force power of the universe with manual dexterity and 2 cognitive minds. And we have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. Right here, right now, I can step into the consciousness of my right hemisphere where I am the life force power of the universe. I am the life force power of the 50 trillion beautiful molecular geniuses that make up my form, at one with all that is. Or I can choose to step into the consciousness of my left hemisphere, where I become a single individual, a solid, separate from the flow, separate from you. I am Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, intellectual, neuroanatomist. These are the we inside of me. Which would you choose? Which do you choose? And when? I believe that the more time we spend choosing to run the deep inner peace circuitry of our right hemispheres, the more peace we will project into the world, and the more peaceful our planet will be. And I thought that was an idea worth spreading. Thank you.
Well, everyone, any comments? Kenny?
I'm not sure, because I've only seen it now, but it looks like she's teaching the same lesson that Buddha taught 26 centuries ago, but she's using entirely different stories. So we communicate in words, and when we get to the advanced level, we communicate in myths and stories. So the story she told was this brain surgeon story. And boy, did she ever tell it well. I found myself really kind of getting what she said because she was so credible.
Yeah.
But it's still the same story. And when she asked that question at the end, which would you pick, in the left brain or the right brain, after she had described them so dramatically from personal experience, I mean, it was fabulous. She said, which would you pick? And then she picked the right side. Buddha says, don't do that. Take both, because that's what you are at this stage. I mean, obviously she had a problem with both. At one stage, she was only one side, and then she dripped in and out of it. And she's making as if it's a physical thing in her brain that's, she divides in two and all that. So that's the story, and fine. But what's her experience? And can we have that experience? And do we want that experience? And is there some way we can get it without having a brain hemorrhage? Now, when some people think you can do that with drugs, these whatever, those drugs, and blank out half. Oh, okay, I don't know much about that, but it's what my contribution is. It's the same story, and that story's been told a number of times, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I guess what you're talking about, is it called the middle path in Buddhism? That it's not the left or the right,
yes, the middle way.
The middle way, yes, because you're still in the material world. But I think, what she was saying is a lot of us are so caught up on the left side of the brain, and we forget that there is this other side of us, right? So
yeah, and so in her case, it took an accident, a hemorrhage. Wow, that's pretty extreme. Now, if we want to do it intentionally, then there's different ways of achieving that goal through training the mind. But that's the interesting part is that it was so interesting to hear her describe these levels of consciousness. And she says, well, this brain does this and that brain does that. Forget that. What we want to remember is our experience, because I'm not a brain anatomy expert. I don't know, and I don't care whether it was this half or that half, or whether it was my brain at all. But there's a conscious experience going on, and wow, can we make a goal based on her analysis, or on Buddha's analysis, or whoever? It doesn't matter. If we have these experiences and we put them in a comprehensive kind of story-like thing, like she did, then we can say, what do we want to do now?
yeah, she very much emphasized the whole idea of choice, right? Minute by minute, we can make different choices, right? Yeah. So anyway, any other comments? Anything that people would like to say, Brent?
I thought it was just incredible, to watch this, because I've had a number of psychedelic experiences that are pretty much exactly like what she's talking about. I mean, you get into this place where you're just not a person at all anymore. You're one with all the energy around you. You're one with consciousness everywhere that's ever been or ever will be. I mean, it's outside time and space even. It's just so incredible. So I could really relate to what she was saying, and it was really wonderful to see a person who's, hasn't lost it, it has it with them, and she was speaking from that place to the extent that she's still in touch with it. You could feel it in her voice. The one thing I would disagree, though, is that it's a choice by choice, or a minute by minute choice. I don't think that's the case at all. Because if it were the case that you could just choose that, we would have already done that, and if we could do it right now, we would do it. But how do you do that? You have to have some kind of an experience that lays it out in front of you, and you have to have a really strong desire to want to make the switch before that could really happen. I mean, I thought some of the places I've been before on psychedelics, I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to be from now on. This is the space that I'm going to be in. And then you come off of it, or you get the mass pulled out of your brain that's causing it to happen, and then your old identities start coming back. But the experience of that is just incredible, and that's one of the best talks I've ever seen in my life of anyone talking about anything. I mean, she was just so wonderfully right in the middle of it, and her voice was cracking. She could hardly even talk. She was so involved in that. So it was just an amazing experience to watch her.
Yeah, and especially when she says nirvana, I could experience nirvana, right? She's really there, and she talks about the expansiveness, and we are in an energy field, right? She felt connected to everything and everyone, right? So, yeah. Kelly?
Yeah, I saw that talk years ago, and I thought it was really good, and I still agree with it entirely. It's excellent. Everything that she says, yes, is true when you're having an outer, that kind of experience. Yeah.
Dominic?
Yes. I thought she did an absolutely phenomenal job of telling her story so articulately, but she used her entire body to tell the story. It was just amazing. And such a poignant lesson to recognize that really there are two of us inside of our body and our brain. There's, the left brain perception and the right brain perception. And for me, being a 35-year meditator, particular spiritual path, I have spent many hours in meditation, a particular type of meditation. And so I've learned over the years to be able to discern when I'm in right brain and when I'm in left brain, when I'm in the present moment of now and there's no thinking, and when I'm in my left brain and that brain that is, always chattering, always going in the future, in the past, and always organizing and tasking and doing versus being. And it's nice if you can use drugs and get there like that without, a lot of discipline and time and energy put into getting there naturally without drugs. Because without the drugs, then you become reliant on the drugs to get there, and then you don't know how to get there without a substance to do it for you, essentially. And I've never used drugs. I've just been a meditator for years and years and years and years. But I do, when I go to sleep at night and when I'm waking up in the morning, I'm able to recognize when my left brain starts to come online. When I first come into consciousness, it's like very peaceful and very centered and very, you just are in that beautiful space of non-thinking, just being. And then I watch my brain like wind up and start and talking and telling me and tasking and organizing. And then it's like off to the races. And
That's true.
And I'm thrown into my day. And so then, I have to discipline myself to sit still and to take time out to meditate. And I'm not always able to get out of my left brain. Sometimes, no matter how many hours I spend, the chatter doesn't stop. But on those days when I can step out of my left brain and I can be in beingness, and experience no thought. It's divine. I wish I was there all the time, just like nirvana, just like she described.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Dominic, I'm curious, have you ever had an experience that comes close to that when you were meditating that we just saw?
Yes.
Kind of connecting or a feeling that you're part of everything around you, kind of feeling. Yeah. And Destiny, any comments?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I didn't know about the left brain, right brain thing exactly the way she explained it. So that was really that was really informative and really gave it like a physical quality that you could say, oh, this is what's happening. And I, just a way to really understand it. And I've totally gone through those both brain experiences. And yeah, so I mean, and it's interesting about the choice. I do think choice is a big thing, but I think you have to have the awareness. If you're lacking the awareness, you don't even know there's a choice to be had.
I just wrote down a few things because, the whole idea of language, right? We do live in a world of language. And if you look at the school system, it's all about, introducing or developing the language for children, that sort of thing, mathematics and that. So our school system very much focuses on the left side of the brain. But I often wonder, should there be more emphasis on the right side of the brain? More music, more art, other creative outlets for children so they can develop it more. Because I think, when we get into reading and mathematics and testing and all this, it's all about competition, right? This me is better than that person over there kind of thing, right? We teach kids at a very young age about competition and separation, right? I just thought I'd put that out there.
They used to have a lot more art and music program in the schools. And over the years, it's gone to like, it's been a while, but I do know that they've definitely cut back a lot of those programs.
Yeah.
You and I had exactly the same thought at the same time. That's exactly what I was going to say, because when I was a kid,
Oh,
when I was a kid, it was exactly the same way. We had music training if we wanted to with the band. We had art and stuff, and every time I read something about the news of education, they keep cutting back. They cut back on physical education. No wonder everybody's so fat, because I mean, they weren't back then. They weren't that back then, and so all these programs get cut that are about being human, about being something else besides some worker that's going to have a job someday making money. It's all seems to be geared toward that end of things, unfortunately.
Yeah, my husband recalls that when he was, I think, in grade 10, he had a high school teacher that taught them meditation. He still remembers that experience, right? Meditating in class, preparing for class that way. And I think these are, good exercises to introduce to kids, or just quiet time, sitting quietly. Right.
In grade 1, we had a teacher. I'll never forget her. I don't know why, but she was really nice. But anyway, she used to have quiet time every day. Every day when we would come back into the class from playing outside, we would have like about 20 minutes of quiet time.
Yeah, and I think that's an important time to have, right? Because it gives you a chance to reflect on things. And it just allows you to be still.
Yeah, we would have to put our heads down.
Yeah.
On the desk, and like like she was very serious about it, which was good.
Mm-hmm. And even I know another one's Christian here. There may be some in the group, but when I've gone to churches now, I've been invited to churches by friends and that sort of thing. There's been quite a shift now, where in the past a church might be a quiet, reflective place. It now has become like a community center, an entertainment center. I can remember going to a church in Chicago with a friend from Canada. And we went to the church that I guess Obama had gone to, right? And they had spotlights, they had singers and dancers and all this sort of stuff. It was a huge show. It was a big production. They had television cameras there and all this. And I thought, what happened to just sitting and praying and or being quiet, like that did not exist in this church.
That
So
wasn't a
Yeah.
special occasion. That was
it,
Sunday
it
service.
wasn't a special, that's what they
Oh,
did every Sunday.
wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah. There's a church, there's several actually here who do the same thing. It's a huge, like, I mean, they've got, it's like a rock band, like you're going to a concert.
yeah.
Wow, it's totally different. I mean, I went to church when I was a little girl. I was the only one in my house who wanted to go, and I went with some next door neighbors of ours, and because their kids and I, like, we were good friends, and so they would go to church every Sunday, and I would go with them, and yeah, I mean they had a nice church choir. It was totally different. And then years later, you go to these churches and you're like, whoa, this is like a concert. Go, whoa. It's different. Yeah, definitely. There's no real reflection anymore, kind of, in a church. Yeah. Not saying all, but yeah, some, quite a few.
So
In
I
turn,
just want to go back to a few things that Jill Bolte Taylor said, and she talks about at one point her spirit surrenders, right? There was a lot of noise. She was picking up all this noise around her, right? But then she would feel enormous, right? It was like a genie coming out of a bottle, right? She felt liberated. And then she thought, there's no way I'll be able to go back into this body, right? Because, it was so small in comparison to what she really was. She also said there are no boundaries. Atoms blended between me and the wall. There was total silence, a feeling of magnificent energy and expansiveness. So these are, this goes back to why I picked this topic. Is I feel that, and from that talk, she kind of gets into that, is we get all this baggage, through our lives, right? Everything is, the next thing we have to do, and we're hurrying along in life, and we get these labels too of what we are, we're good, we're bad, whatever, right? And ultimately, there probably is nothing wrong with us at all, right? So anyway, I'm just putting it out there for further comment. Kenny?
Let me read this thing
Okay.
because it's directed toward the topic and not so much toward the TED Talk.
Okay.
So remember, my interpretation of the TED Talk is that it's a story, and this story involves brain halves and a brain surgeon and all that medical stuff. So in my interpretation of what happened to her, she had a trauma, and then she was able to describe it in fabulous detail, but it's still a trauma. Now, I had another teacher who taught, I forget whether it was just a story or whether he had actually talked to the person, but somebody fell off a cliff. And as they were falling, and they lived through it, so they fell on sand or something and they survived. As this person was falling, he saw flowers growing out of the side of the cliff. So in some way, time slowed right down. Now, I don't know if you ever had that happen, but it happened to this guy anyway. He's falling down and wham, he hits the bottom and sand, and he lived through it. So what she's describing is her take on whatever. No, it wasn't falling down a cliff, but it was experiencing the medical problem on her left side, whatever. And that's the way the story went. But the talk is the same. That is, something was scaring the daylights out of her, and it had her, she couldn't talk. She couldn't, imagine. And so when she surrendered to it, that's not an uncommon thing. That's part of the story of Easter, in fact, is Jesus surrendering to his own death. So there's lots of examples of that in traditional religion. So it's an important thing. Let me read this thing. This is from some guy. His name is Charles Yu, Y-U. And I just got this morning as I was thinking about, it's one of Susie's books. Ever since you were a boy, you've dreamt of being Kung Fu Guy. You are not Kung Fu Guy. You are currently background ordinary male, but you've been practicing. Maybe tomorrow will be the day. So what he's saying is he wants to be something he's not. And he's practicing Kung Fu in this case, but whatever. And maybe tomorrow he'll be there. So here's us, ordinary people, and we want to go to nirvana like this woman, or we want to have some experience or whatever, some Kung Fu thing, whatever our Kung Fu Guy is. So this is my passion in life. If we just sit back and say, duh, gee, I sure wish I was something I'm not, you're always going to be something you're not. But if you practice something, I think I'll practice being a Kung Fu Guy. I think I'll practice meditation. I think I'll practice taking magic mushrooms, whatever your thing is, I think I'll do that. That relates to having a spiritual goal. And that if you have a spiritual goal and you have a spiritual practice to help you achieve that goal, to me, that's the important thing. So this woman who had the hemorrhage in her brain, she didn't do that. She was kind of forced into it. You know, she was just woke up one day and all of a sudden, wham, there she's in this situation. Same with the guy falling off the cliff. He didn't plan to have a mystical experience, but he sure did. So what I would suggest is that it's not about being perfect or imperfect. It's about what you think you are and what you want to be. And if you want to be something that's you deem to be better than you are now, that means what you are now isn't quite perfect. What you're going to become is perfect. Kung Fu Guy or whatever. I trained in karate. I wanted to be Karate Man, you know, Bruce Lee or whatever. So that I artificially create imperfections in myself so that I can work towards some goal and be something I'm not. And if that be something I'm not happens to be a spiritually magical nirvana person, that's okay.
Or be something you really are that you think you're not. And then
Yeah,
you
that's
find
another
out you
way
were
of
that way
saying it, yeah.
then you just find out that's who you are in the end.
Yeah, I guess that's just another way of saying the same thing though. And it's fine. It means you've got to do some work. And that's the part that I think is important. You perceive something's wrong, or you perceive something is and is not what you want, and you're going to go get that or become that. And maybe you're deluded and you're going to be not deluded and see what you really are. Just another way of saying the same thing. So when it comes to our own perfection or imperfection, it's irrelevant. Animals are perfect. I wonder if a rat has two brains like we humans do.
But if animals are perfect, why are we not perfect then, Kenny?
Because we choose not to be. I want to become a Kung Fu Guy, or I want to have nirvana. So I'm not.
Are we separate from the society we're in? Because we're influenced by television, advertising, the school system, expectations by family and friends. There's so much programming out there. That's why I like the fact too, she focused on the fact that our brain is almost like a computer processor, right? So, you know, do we pick up these labels of what we are due to our society?
We sure do.
Well,
I think the whole idea of perfect and imperfect probably is not really the way we should be looking at her experience at all. Perfect is is a word that, you know, for a human to be perfect, then what does that even mean? Well, it's in the mind of the beholder, isn't it? You know, what does it mean to you? And if you're not perfect, why aren't you? Well, because it's a lot of work, maybe. There's always an excuse. But I think that, you know, we're a work in progress. We don't really know what we are 100% in our totality, whatever that is. We don't really know what that is. And life has opportunities, and we head in the direction of those that we're attracted to, you know. And so why say at any given, I mean, maybe we're perfect because not because of something we accomplish, but just because the fact that we exist. I mean,
Yeah.
consciousness existing
Yeah.
is perfection
Yeah.
in some regard, you know. So that can just be what we are, and then you can just feel perfect all the time. It's when you think you're something you're not. That's when the imperfection gets in. If you've got an ego attachment to something that you're trying to get to because you think that's what you're supposed to be, maybe that's what imperfection really is.